Hello, and welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore ways to achieve those two goals. And we invite interesting and I want to say entrepreneurial, kind of like out of the box kind of people on to help us with that. And today, the reason I use that particular description is today we're joined by Ryan Chaw, and he is he's a real estate entrepreneur, but maybe not the way you always think, right? I mean, Ryan, you can jump in here anytime. Like, I think when people think, oh, real estate investment, okay, I'm going to go buy a big apartment building and I'm going to need to get $2 million ahead of time and things like that. I mean, how did you get started in your real estate investing career?
Yeah, first off, Christine, it's an honor to be on your podcast. I appreciate you inviting me on. But yeah, I actually got started. I was inspired by my grandpa who bought a few properties in the San Francisco Bay Area back in the 50s. And then, over time, the Bay Area prices skyrocketed and rents went up as well. So he was able to cover most of his expenses, like his living expenses, just through the rental income. But not only that, he was also able to provide more for his family by helping cover part of my college tuition and that of my brothers as well. So I really realized that real estate was one of the best ways to create generational wealth. So I wanted to get started as soon as possible. I graduated with my pharmacy degree back in 2015. And then I just worked a ton of overtime. I worked 2 jobs, a lot of overtime to save up for that capital to put myself in a great position to purchase real estate, right? Later on, I realized I didn't have to. There's more creative ways to get started, but I just wanted to get started as soon as possible and have the capital and be in a good financial position. So I bought my first house in 2016, and I rented out to local college students. And I found that I could rent out each bedroom for about 600 to 700, maybe 800, depending on the area. And that means that if I was able to turn like a 4-bedroom house into this rent by the room student housing model, I was able to make anywhere from like $2,500 to $3,400 per house. So that extra cash flow that I was able to get allowed me to scale my portfolio faster. So I basically purchased one single family house by a college each year. And now I'm at 5 years later, I'm at actually 6 single family homes, and it's making $17,580 in per month in rental income.
When you were just saying that, I was thinking of something. First of all, I want to say that's fantastic, right? It's fantastic because it is out of the box. People think, okay, I've got this 4-bedroom house. Now I'm going to rent to, some family with 3 kids. And, this is the traditional model. Everybody on the same lease, right? We've got to have this protection. But you just said, no, I'm going to blow this up because I know that if people, you don't want to have people to have to get their own roommates and try to put 4 people together to be in this home and things like that. Do you ever find like that you've put these people together and they're like not really jiving very well? They're not
Cohesive?
meshing?
Every once in a while, yes, that's true. But yeah, I mean, you made a good point. I feel like, especially with the affordable housing crisis, we're kind of moving toward a co-living situation where these students, instead of paying like $1,200 to stay in the on-campus dormitories, because that's what the dormitories charge, they can pay like 600, half the price. So it makes sense for a lot of them. As far as trying to make them jive, though, I usually put like I'll have like an all-female house, maybe all-male house whenever possible, because a lot of females prefer to stay with only other females. I'll also try to match them up based off of what classes they're taking, what majors they are. So I'll have like a house that's just like the pharmacy school student house, or another that's like the dentistry school student house, or another one that's like the engineering school student house. So I try to match them up to the best of my ability. And for the most part, I would say out of my 28 tenants that I have, I might have like one complaint per year about like maybe a tenant versus tenant like thing where one tenant's not cleaning up his dishes or something like that. But it's usually something very small, and it's something that I can like empower them to just work it, solve the situation.
That it's brilliant though what you're doing, because people who take attracted to the same type of career, a lot of times they have a similar personality, right? Like the engineering personality, that's a certain type of person. Those people are probably going to get along really well. That's really smart. That's a great idea. Yeah, I did a little bit of this when I just first started doing real estate, I was a rental agent. And sometimes we do that. We'd have to put a house together. There'd be like a 6-bedroom house, and you try to find people who would get along with each other. And it never even occurred to me to like get people who were all the same, like the same,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, definitely. And the great part about this is once you have a couple houses in one area near one college, is you can actually ask each one of your tenants, hey, do you have anybody interested? Do you have like friends interested in potentially staying with you at the house, right? If you enjoyed your experience here. And so a lot of times I don't even have to do too much marketing now to find tenants. I just rely on referrals. Let's say I have 28 tenants and each of them have like 3 friends, right? That's I don't know what the math is, 24 like potential tenants that might be interested in rooming at the house. So now it's kind of like an automated system in terms of like getting new tenants in.
Excellent. So your life is easy.
Yeah, like once you reach a certain scale, I would say, it becomes more of a systematic process, and
Yeah,
people just will reach out to you and contact you and say, hey, I know you offer cheap, good student housing near campus that's, only a 5-minute drive or 5-minute walk away from campus, and I'm interested in applying to save some money.
definitely. So what I was thinking of, which is like a bit of a departure, but when you first started saying that, I thought you could actually rent a house yourself if you didn't have the capital to buy one, and then sublet it to people and make a little bit of money.
Yeah, I mean, there's something called like rental arbitrage, is kind of like the situation you're talking about, but there's also like lease options where you basically enter a contract with the seller, and instead of like buying it outright, you lease it from them for like a couple years or so, and then during that lease period, you can sublease it to somebody else. Rent by the room, and then basically over like 1 or 2 or 3 years, that rental income should build up and be able to make that down payment when you go to close on the lease option and buy the house. So there's
Definitely.
several ways to get creative with it, but yeah, that's definitely one of them.
Oh, that's great. So you said that at first you thought you had to basically save up to buy this place. And I think that's what a lot of people think. Now you said that since then you've realized there are some more creative opportunities. And I know we just talked about one. What are some other
Yeah, I
ways
would
you
say
discovered?
one other very powerful strategy for real estate investors, and I didn't use this at first because I was like, oh, 2008, they used this method, and it was a little bit, some people over leveraged. But there's something called a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit. And it's basically like a credit card, like a very high amount credit card. So if you have equity built up on your property, especially nowadays, if you own a property, the prices went up like a lot. So you probably have some equity on that property. And some people, they have like $50,000, $100,000 worth of equity and just, appreciation and just loan pay down. And what you can do is actually access that equity as cash. You can liquidate it essentially into cash and use that cash as a down payment on another house by using a home equity line of credit. And usually a home equity line of credit, like I said, it's kind of like a credit card. So you can pay into it, you can take out, you can pay back into it, take out, and you're only charged interest on the amount you take out. And you're charged, I mean, it depends on it's a variable rate, so it'll depend on kind of the time frame. But right now, like if you took a home equity line of credit on like your own house, it could be around like 4% interest rate. If you're taking out on like an investment property, it might be more like 5 or 6% interest rate, but you only pay interest when you take it out. So it's like a credit card. Like I said, if you keep the balance at zero, you don't pay anything. But when you do need the money to basically put a down payment on a house, then yeah, it makes sense to do it, because let's say you're being charged 5% interest on that money, but then you're making a cash on cash return on the house that you purchase of like 12 or 15 or 20%. Well, then it just makes sense to do it, because you're making basically 20% minus the 5%. You're making a 15% interest on that money.
Yeah, excellent. So, sorry, I was just thinking of something while you were saying that, and now.
No worries. I actually
Oh,
used that to buy my fourth and fifth property. So I basically say when I bought my first property, the equity on that paid for 2 more properties. So I bought 3 properties with the same cash, just that
Mhm.
initial 20% down payment on the first
Mhm.
house.
So when you first got started, and maybe this is something unique to your market, to Sacramento, but why did you decide to go with a single family home versus, maybe a more traditional multifamily type of situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. First off, multifamilies were a lot more expensive where I was at. So I was like, I'm not sure if I can, comfortably afford something like this, like a 20% down. But if I were to go back, multifamilies is a very great way of getting started as well. You can buy up to a quadruplex using a conventional financing. So you can go as low as like a 5 or 3, even 3% down payment or 3.5% down payment on a multifamily and then live in one unit and rent out to others. So that's a very great way to get started as well. But for me, it was just like the houses were within my price range. The single family homes were within my price range. And then I could basically take advantage of the co-living situation to increase my cash flow to help me scale my portfolio.
Hmm. So when you sorry, I'm losing my brain today. Don't worry, the editor will take that stuff out.
No
When I have
worries.
momentary lapses of reason, she says, "Oh, Chris spaced it." Um, when one of the reasons I think that people might shy away from the idea, because another thing you could do even with limited financing is start with a condo. And I think one of the reasons people tend to shy away from a single family home is because of maintenance, right? They're thinking, I'm going to have to mow the lawn. And, here in Boston, you'd be shoveling or,
The
plowing the
snow,
driveway of
yeah.
snow and things like that. So how have
Right.
you dealt with the whole maintenance aspect of it?
Yeah, so it's really important when you do something like investing in homes. I would say even any homes that you have some good handyman and general contractors that you can count on. So I would ask, like, I would just go to my real estate agent and say, "Hey, do you know anybody who can, like you said, shovel snow, or who can take care of the backyard, who can replace appliances that break down, that type of stuff." And I would go to my neighbors as well and say, "Hey, do you have anybody that you used for, I see that you got new flooring, can you give me in touch with that contact?" Right. And so you basically start building up your network of contractors, so that if something were to come up, you just ping that contractor and say, "Hey, we have this situation." And then you give them the lockbox code for the spare key. They let themselves in, do their work, right? Then they send you a bill, and you send them a check. And so you can basically automate this whole maintenance process if you wanted to. There's software out there as well. There's something like Tenant Cloud, for example, where the tenants could actually input like something is broken, and then it'll send a message directly to the contractor if you really want to automate everything. But for the most part, it's about building up that team that you can count on. And that's how you can create this passive system for yourself. For example, I'm a full-time pharmacist. I recently cut back to 32 hours a week, but I did this while I was a full-time pharmacist. And essentially, I slowly built it up on the side and just repeated the same model over and over. Once I noticed it was working very well, I basically just did the same thing for the second, third, fourth property. And, that's how I achieved the scale. And the team of contractors and landscapers and your real estate agent and your lenders and all that. I count on them to basically help me throughout this process, so it becomes a passive thing for me. I also empower the tenants as well to like, I have like a list of house rules and a list of if something breaks down, this is what you do, that type of stuff. So that's how I created that system.
No, that's good. It's perfect what you're saying about empowering the tenants, because I think a lot of landlords are like, well, no, they have to call me all the time. I don't want them calling the plumber. I don't want them, having people over there all the time. But in reality, they're not going to do that. I mean, most people are going to just be only calling if there's a problem, right? You're trusting them and treating them like grown-ups. And I think that's a good plan.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, for instance, if a tenant complains about another tenant because, there's dishes all over the place or everything's a mess or something, they're creating a mess, then what I do is I go to the tenant who complained, about the other tenant and say, hey, why don't you have a face-to-face discussion with that tenant first, come up with an actionable plan that you can both implement to make sure this doesn't, happen in the future. Obviously, also state why you're upset, why this is upsetting you, and then implement that plan. And if you still have issues with that tenant afterwards, then you can come back to me. And almost like 9 times out of 10, once they do that, once I send out that email or have that conversation on the phone, they go ahead and implement it, and I don't hear back from them again. So I'm assuming that the problem is most likely solved.
Yeah, it's if you allow people to make you the intermediary, then they will. But if you say,
Exactly.
okay, go talk to the
Yeah.
other human being and see how you make out like
Try to
that. And
work it
then
out first.
worst case,
Exactly.
right? I'll get involved. No, that's very smart. Did you do this all sort of instinctively, or did you kind of learn these
No,
things?
actually, I learned the hard way. So I had a tenant who complained about another guy. He was like, "Oh, he invited like 80 people over to this house party, and none of us are okay with it, right?" And so I was like, "Okay, I'll go talk to him, right?" And that was a big mistake because this guy now says like, "What? My other tenants are like talking behind my back to the landlord about me." Now he got even more upset. He got really angry on the phone. I could tell from his voice, and the situation just kind of spiraled even worse and worse. And eventually I had to like go to the parent and say, hey, this is what's happening, can you help me out here, right? But I realized that if I try to solve the situation like as the middleman, usually it doesn't work out very well, because again, the tenant will get upset that the other guys are talking behind his back and telling the landlord on them. So that's why I say, hey, work it out first, like with that tenant, and talk to them about it, have that discussion, and have that plan you can implement. And then afterwards, if you're still having problems, then come back to me.
And especially because they are students, right? They're maybe used to like going to their parents and saying, fix this, right? And you're like, no,
Exactly.
you're living alone now, you're in school, time to be grown up, right?
Yeah, I think it does develop them as a young professional later on in life, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's good. You're doing them a service you didn't even intend to, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, they're at the stage where they're starting to learn that responsibility, right? So that's that's really important for you to empower them to kind of walk them through the process, how you would solve a situation like that.
Yeah. And you wanted to always go with is this also a California thing? Do you have to go with a long-term tenant, or did you ever think about doing a short-term like Airbnb type of situation?
Oh, that's a great question. So I didn't want to have as much maintenance as an Airbnb. I kind of did something in between. What I do is I have the tenants on 1 year leases, and they're able to sublease during the summer if they're not going to be taking summer school. So all the schools that I invest in, they have summer schools. So they're able to basically find a sublease during the summer, because people need a place to stay during summer school.
Yeah.
I also help out a little bit with the marketing, but for the most part, yeah, I do yearly leases, and then we renew the lease. Usually, I would say about a couple months in advance. So I have my leases usually start around August, and if I start like in the middle of winter, I would do a lease until July, and then start the next lease August to August. And basically, again, like if they wanted to sublease it during any of that time, they have the responsibility to find a subleaser for that. But I do again like 1 year to 1 year, and then renew it about 4 months. I would say 4 months before. So if I'm shooting for August, I would renew the lease in April to make sure that I know who's going to be staying there next year, and kind of get a head start on the marketing if I need to fill any of the
Yeah.
vacancies.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, we do that here as well. I manage a couple of properties, not because I want to, but just because I sold them to the person and they're like, will you take care of these? I got stuck doing it. But I started in January already marketing these for September, because the
Yeah,
kids are basically, they're going to be leaving in May. They're doing
right.
exams all through like May, and then they're studying and stuff like that. So they actually want to get this tied up as soon as they can,
Hmm.
if possible. And there are less properties on the market, so there's less competition. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
you might as well, if they know they're leaving, it's not as if it's not like a person who might be, oh, I'm going to, I might buy a house or something. These are students. They know, are you graduating or not? Are you coming back
Yeah,
or not? Right. So
exactly,
they know.
exactly. Yeah. they'll usually know what their plans are for next year. But you're giving them that option. Hey, you have the option. If you want to stay another year, you can do it. If not, that's fine. I can, also help you find another house when August comes. But decide around April or May so that we can be sure, okay, you're gonna, who's gonna be staying at this house for next year.
Yeah. Interesting. So do you have like a crazy story or something that happened during this process where you're just like, okay, or anything, did you ever think, oh my gosh, am I cut out for this? Do I really want to do this? Anything really
Yeah,
tragic
so
happened?
when I bought my first house, definitely the problem was it was an older house. It was over 100 years old. And so I had a lot more maintenance items that came up. And one of the things that came up was actually, I got this call at like 10 p.m. on the weekend, I remember. And basically the guy said, hey, there's a sewage that's popping out, like blowing out of the kitchen sink, and
Oh my
it's now
God.
all over the kitchen floor. And it's also in the showers as well. And so it's like, it smells horrible. And we need it fixed right now because this is an emergency. And so I was like calling up people, trying to find somebody to come out and sanitize it. And I was like, nobody would pick up their phone. So eventually I finally found somebody. Obviously they charged like premium because they came out on the weekend at night at like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. And basically, they stuck a camera down the sewage pipe, and they found out that the sewage line was broken. There were roots from the trees that are sticking into it, so it broke the pipe, and it cost $9,000 to replace the whole pipe. And so I
Wow.
realized, oh my God, like, is it always going to be this expensive? What if one repair like wipes out my cash flow for the year, right? Luckily,
Yeah.
I had that extra cash flow to pay for it. But I was down a lot of money. And I realized that one thing I could have done was during the home inspection, I could add on a sewage lateral line inspection, and that would have caught that the roots were already kind of creeping into the pipes. And I'll be able to ask the seller for some credit. They're selling the house, they're getting like, $300,000 in cash. Maybe they could put some of that cash toward that repair that
Yeah.
needed to be done, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I learned my lesson there. Definitely do your due diligence and do the proper inspections. If the home inspection is showing like there's something that might be wrong with the roof, then go ahead and add on that roof inspection, because it might be, a couple hundred at first, but if they find something that's a couple $1,000 repair, now you have leverage to talk with the seller and say, hey, you're selling me a house in this condition, it's going to need this repair, can you put some credit towards that?
So you were talking before about having a real estate agent on your team and working with a real estate agent, and I think a lot of people believe you can't that you can't get a good deal, right? If it's already on the market, forget it. You're not going to be able to get a good deal. Did you
Mhm.
find these properties on your own, or did you actually manage to get a good deal that from something that was already for sale?
So like I would say, I think four out of the six properties, four or five of the six properties, they were on the MLS. They were on Zillow, on the MLS. And honestly, I just kept my eye out for them. So right as they popped up into my inbox, you can actually have your agent send you MLS listings directly to your email as soon as they pop up. Right when it pops up, I take a look. I look every day. When I was actively hunting, searching for a house, I basically check my email every day for listings. And as soon as I see it pop up, I'll basically schedule a walkthrough within the first 2 or 3 days, and I'll put an offer if I like it after doing the walkthrough, right? So I act pretty fast on it, and I was able to get most of my houses on market. But with that being said, I use an agent who has a very strong network in the local area that I invest in. So any houses that kind of pop up off market, because he basically does his own advertising, and he finds sellers as well, just through direct mail and all that. So when one pops up, he'll let me know before, like if it meets my parameters.
Mhm.
Basically, a large single family home with ability to add like 1 or 2 bedrooms to increase the cash flow, and it's very very close to the college. He'll send me a message and say, hey, this popped up, it meets basically what you're looking for, and then he'll sell it to me before he even lists it on the MLS.
Mhm. Great. Yeah, that's part of it, right? Getting a strong network, getting people to understand, and they'll be out hunting for you because you're going to be
Yeah, and it
working.
works in his best interest as well because he represents both the buyer and the seller too. So he gets the full real estate agent commission if he does
Mhm.
that versus putting it on the market. Let's say another agent comes along, then they split the commission.
Right.
So yeah, agents are incentivized to find you off market listings if you tell them exactly what you're looking for and if they have kind of like a marketing and a network in that area that you're investing in.
Yeah, it's not yours is quite a specific ask, right? You're not just looking for any single
Exactly.
family home anywhere in the world. You want this, near a college, this particular amount of, at least 4 bedrooms, probably things like that. So,
Mhm.
so when you look at your situation today, what's like a typical day for you? Are you at all involved in the actual management of these properties and doing your portfolio?
Yeah, so I would say, a few maybe like a few times a month I'll get like a text saying, "Hey, maybe a fence fell down and we need somebody to repair it, or maybe the dryer isn't working anymore and they already tried troubleshooting it from the directions given to them." And basically what I'll do is I'll just forward that message to my contractor and say, "Hey, can you go ahead and fix this within the week or so?" And if they have time on their schedule and able to fix it within the week, I use handymen that are pretty much ready to fix something as it breaks down.
Yeah.
But if they're busy, then I'll go to, I have a second plan B, right? Plan B contractor. But basically, yeah, that only happens like a few times a month. And then I pretty much the rest of it is hands off. I don't have to, the rent just basically comes in and I feel kind of bad that I'm not like working, but that's the passive income part of it, right? The rent basically just comes in at the beginning of the month, 17,000 just getting deposited in your bank, and it's passive income. It truly is. The 1 month that I do have to do a lot more work is during, I would say, April or March or sorry, May time, where I do my advertising for any vacancies that I do have to fill. But like I said, a lot of times I just rely on referrals now to find people to who want to stay in the house.
Excellent.
Um, yeah. And
So
if you
Ryan,
really
what
want to automate it even more, I haven't done this myself. I use Excel sheets to keep track of everything. But if you want to automate it more, you can just use something like I said, like a software like Tenant Cloud, or I think there's like Rent Ready or something. There's other, that type of management software that you can use to automate everything.
Yeah. So Ryan, what advice would you give to people, who are like inspired by you right now and are wanting
Mhm.
to follow in your footsteps, or just they're just hoping that someday they can get some little bit of passive income coming in? How would you recommend that people get started if they don't have a lot of resources already?
Yeah. So first off, you have to realize a lot of people, there's a lot of fears that come up when you invest in real estate. It's very intimidating because it's something you've never done before, right? With that being said, I would say the most common fears are like, should I buy now because the market is too hot? The prices are too high. Another fear that commonly comes up is, am I going to be able to manage all this? Am I going to have enough time? Do I have enough money? That type of stuff. Or how do I know what's the right location, right? To buy a deal. There's all those questions that come up. And so what I recommend, there's a couple of things you can do. First is find somebody who's doing exactly what you want to do. Let's say you want to, flip houses, then find somebody who's flipped a lot of houses and then have them as a mentor, basically, and ask them if they can mentor you. That's probably one of the easiest ways to get started, because if you think about college, like to get my pharmacy degree, I went through like 3 years of schooling through people who are actual pharmacists, and I actually, I shadowed them, and they actually showed me this is what you do, right? So the same thing for real estate. It's a very great idea to find a mentor if you can, to help you get started. The second thing is, what I would do is get started as soon as possible, because even if the market's like crazy high and all that, right? Interest rates right now are very low. You should be taking advantage of that. And even if the market does go down, let's say the housing prices go down, well, the interest rate's probably going to be going up. So they're inversely proportional. So the best thing to do is just get started as soon as possible. And real estate keeps up with inflation. So as inflation goes up, your house appreciates, your rent goes up a little bit every year. And basically you're planting a seed and letting it grow into a tree, right? You don't want to like wait, and then plant the seed finally. You want to plant the seed as soon as you can and then let it grow. And that's how real estate works, because you gain wealth through several mechanisms in real estate. So there's appreciation of the property, right? There's equity pay down by the tenant. The tenant will, a little bit of the mortgage every month goes into the equity, your equity share of the house. There's, rent, cash flow. Essentially, you're getting cash flow in every month, and then you can use that cash flow to buy another property or leverage that. What else is there? Oh, depreciation and tax benefits. So every year you deduct a certain amount of wear and tear on the house. It's like assumed wear and tear. The IRS assumes that your house is going down in value, but actually in actuality, it's going up in value, obviously. So you subtract, like, let's say 7,000, 8,000 per year in just depreciation from your rental income. And so if you're at like, I don't know, let's just assume 50% tax bracket to make it easy. If you deduct $8,000, well, you're saving $4,000 back in taxes. So there's plenty of ways that this actually grows your wealth if you buy as soon as you can, as soon as possible. If I were to go back, I would actually buy my first house while I was a freshman in college.
Yeah. And you've seen that firsthand, but from your grandfather, right? How San Francisco exploded and he just happened to buy at the right time. And probably at that point it was uncomfortable. He was saying, oh boy, I got all these payments, I got all this money,
All these
am I going to be
mortgages. It
okay?
feels like houses are high. And honestly, it always will feel like the housing prices are high. When you look back on it though, with inflation at play, you'll go like, oh, wow, I got that thing for a deal. Because like a $500,000 house now in like 10 years, because of inflation, it'll look like it was worth only 250,000. Because basically, let's say the inflation rate is 4% per year. After 10 years, you have a 40% reduction in the value of your cash, right? So that's essentially what it becomes. A $500,000 house will become a $250,000 house in the future.
And the point you brought up about interest rates is actually excellent as well. People don't think about that. Especially in an investment property. Who cares what you paid for it? It's your monthly outlay, right?
Exactly.
Am I going to be able to make money by buying this thing? It doesn't matter. Did I get a good deal, right? Because over time, you're always going to have got a good deal if you just hang on to it, right?
Yep, exactly.
But the interest rates have a huge, I mean, when I bought my first house, interest rates were like 14%. So,
wow.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. Even at 10%, right? A $500,000 house is going to cost you $5,000 a month, roughly, to pay for. And that's right. A fraction now. It's a fraction of that now.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, and plus it's a good thing for the community as well. Like for what I do, this co-living situation, it's providing housing for more people because we're having a inventory crisis, right? And the students are able to stay there and save money on their student loans because the student debt crisis is crazy right now. This is like one way to combat it. They're cutting half of their expenses in their lodging because colleges, like I said, are charging like twice the price as off-campus housing, so they could save a lot of money by just doing that.
Really adds
Plus,
up.
have more privacy too, versus like bunking with your bunkmate at the college, right?
I know, and that's what I was thinking when you said they're paying $1,200 a month, but that's to share a room with someone else.
Exactly, that's the crazy part.
Crazy. I don't know why more parents don't buy a house like this, right? For their kids, put their kids in there, go get some roommates, and
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy when we don't question what's customary or traditional, but it's crazy. They're spending a lot of money by doing that, staying at the dorms versus just saving some money staying off campus. We're very close to the campus.
Right. Yeah. No, it's really, really smart what you did. I'm very impressed with your ingenuity and, like I said, thinking out of the box. People like, oh no, I got to go buy a big apartment building. I can't make money on a single family house. I hear this kind of stuff all the time. And
just like all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I can make money on anything.
If you want to get started, you can like, if you live in the house for a year, you can get started with like just 3.5% down payment. Right. And so if you bought like a $500,000 house, it would cost like what, 15,000, a little bit more than 15,000 as a down payment. So you can get started with very, very little cash.
Mhm. And you're before we started the recording, you were telling me that you're also practicing what you preach, right? You're house hacking your own residence.
Yeah, actually, yeah. So I'm living at a house in Sacramento. I was able to put in a fifth bedroom into it. And then I rented out the fifth bedroom for to a couple. They're paying like 1160. The other ones I'm charging around $850 in rent. So my rental income is 3650 for this house per month. $3,650, and my mortgage payment is about 2,300, and that includes taxes and insurance. So not only am I living at the house for free, I'm also making an extra what's the math on that?
Like
1,200.
1300 or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that in
Yeah.
rental income, right? So yeah, I mean it's a great way for people to get started. I mean it's a little intimidating, but at first for sure. But just get started with a house hack. That's the easiest way to start because you have a lower down payment to get started, and you kind of test the waters, right? See what it's like to have housemates and what common maintenance issues comes up and how to solve them and that type of stuff.
Mhm. After your experience with the sewer pipe, do you now just focus on newer homes?
Yeah, that's definitely that's definitely true. I would say my cutoff is kind of like 1940s. So anything before the 1940s, just the materials and all that they use in construction, a lot of it breaks down by 2020, basically. And
100
so
years later, 80 years
yeah,
later.
unless they have like renovated and replaced all those parts, I usually try to stay away from those houses. But a lot of the big ticket items I'll check when I do my due diligence home inspections. So especially like the roof, the HVAC, the water heater, the electricals, that type of stuff. I'll basically see what condition they are in and how new they are. So like how new is the HVAC, how new is the roof, how long is that roof supposed to last for, and so I can kind of get an idea, a rough estimate of how much I would actually be having to pay into this house to bring it up to rent condition or rent ready condition, and how much big ticket items will have to pay for over the next 5-10 years later, right?
Yeah, so you can get those into the budget right now and not be surprised.
Exactly. Or you can ask the seller credit for it. Like let's say, your HVAC is 30 years old or 35 years old and it's near the end of the life according to the home inspector, right? So can we get some credit because we're probably going to have to replace this very soon as we purchase the house, right? And usually the seller is, yeah, sure, it depends on the seller, obviously, but if you phrase it in a way that's saying, hey, we're buying this house and we're going to have to make these replacements, can you put some credit towards it? A lot of sellers will at least meet you halfway or even the full thing a lot of times if you
Yeah.
negotiate it correctly.
So Ryan, what do you wish I would have asked you that I didn't think to ask? What do you want to share with people?
Oh, I guess like I mean, you asked most of the common questions. I would say scaling. That's a question that a lot of people have as well. So to scale your portfolio after the first, like how do you buy the second one, right? You need more cash to buy the second, third, fourth one. Well, one of the best ways again is to use like the equity that you developed on that first house, right? So like a HELOC or cash out refinance, usually you want the equity to build like I would say 2 or 3 years. So around year three, that's when you can take out that equity and start purchasing more property or so. The other thing is because we are renting out by the bedroom, what I try to do is try to create as many bedrooms as possible. So if I can make a 3-bedroom house into like a 5-bedroom house, every bedroom that I add is an extra $600 to $700 in rental income. So it's like 1,400 for 2 bedrooms, 2 more bedrooms, right? So I try to put in those bedrooms right away. My first house, I actually didn't put in a bedroom for 3 years, and I calculated how much money I lost by not putting in that bedroom. And I shouldn't have done that, but it
You
was
don't want to
about
do
like
that.
20. Yeah, I think it was like $23,000 or something like that. And I was like,
Ouch.
oh yeah, I mean, I could have totally put a bedroom here easily. And right now it's renting out for like 550 a month, but even that small amount, adds up again over time.
Yeah.
So using this co-living model, first make sure, of course, actually this is one thing I should mention, you should make sure that the city allows that type of housing. like student housing, because there are some cities that'll say you can't have more than two unrelated tenants, right? Luckily, the places I invested in allowed that. And so you want to do your research for that first.
Yeah.
But once are able to do that, what you want to do is, of course, maximize the bedrooms possible. And a lot of the students, they actually don't need that much common space. I mean, it could sound a little cruel, but it's true. Like
Oh,
they
it's true.
usually
Yeah.
only need like a dining area / living room, right? And if they have like extra family rooms and offices and all that, those can be turned into extra bedrooms, because unless they're like a student trying to start a family or something like that, they're not going to want that extra space. They just stay in, they have their room, then that's the main place they stay. And the other times they're in class most of the time, right? So they just come home to eat, shower, sleep, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, try to maximize the number of bedrooms so that allows you to create that additional cash flow. So after, year 2 or 1, you're able to purchase that second property a
Yeah.
lot
Well,
faster.
and because they don't know each other, it's not like it's a bunch of friends who are renting a house together where they're going to want to hang out all the time in the common area. In
Yeah.
addition to not having much time because they're always studying or sleeping or in class, they're not, I mean, not that they're not going to like each other or be friends or whatever, but it's not going to be a priority for them to have a huge
Yeah, I mean,
living
if you
room where
think
they can
about
all
the
hang out.
dormitories, right? A lot of times you just have your bunkmate, right? And then a shared bathroom with everyone, and that's it. You don't even have a kitchen, right?
Right.
So staying in this, off campus, they're getting more privacy, they're getting a kitchen, more space, a backyard, a garage, and all those amenities already. So having like 3 different common areas is it's not going to be a huge plus for them. And it just
Yeah.
makes sense to have another student save money by putting in the bedroom.
Right. Definitely. It helps them as well to have that one extra person.
Mhm.
But do you ever run into a problem with bathrooms? I mean,
Yeah, so
well,
the key
I'm
for
in New
this,
England, so we've got 4 bedrooms, 1 bath, right? I mean, I don't
yeah,
know. California might be a little more sophisticated in that
right.
way.
No, it's funny actually. My dad, he has 5 siblings and obviously 2 parents, and they all shared a single bathroom. Can you believe that? So it's definitely possible. But what I recommend nowadays is keeping it to a 3-to-1 ratio. So 3 people to 1 bathroom, to 1 shared bathroom. So if I have like a 5-bedroom house, I would want at least 2 shared bathrooms for that. Or if I have a 4-bedroom house, that would be 1 shared bathroom and then maybe 1 private bathroom,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So make sure you keep that 3-to-1 ratio wherever possible.
Yeah.
Because it's just, it's kind of like you want to work with the tenants. You want to make sure they're happy as well. You don't want to cram everyone into a single bathroom. But with that being said, people are very adaptable, right? But again, I would keep with the 3-to-1 ratio.
Good
Mm.
advice.
Yeah.
So Ryan, are you available to help people if they want to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a free PDF, kind of like an ebook that you guys can read through on my student housing strategy and just getting started in real estate in general, some of the mindset shifts behind that as well. And I provide that at www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. That's www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. And newbie is spelled NEWBIE.
Excellent. That's great. So I'm going to put that in obviously in the show notes as well. So if people are driving or whatever, you don't have to try to write that down.
Yeah. I mean, feel free to reach out to me too. I also have like a newsletter for updates on what I'm doing, some strategies I'm using. So yeah, just contact me there.
That's great. So I don't think it'll be too long, Ryan, before we're not going to be able to find you at the pharmacy anymore.
That's true, actually. So I'm 29 this year, and I'll be retiring. Actually, I'll be turning 30 this year. I'll be retiring next year when I hit 31. About.
Congratulations. Great job.
I'll probably be working pharmacy like maybe 1 or 2 days or so because I earned this doctorate degree and I want to use it. And I do like helping people. That's why I got into pharmacy, and that's why I still work a pharmacist job. I mean, I could technically, if I wanted to, I could retire right now
Yeah.
with the cash flow that I'm making. But I like working, right, and I like giving back. So I'll probably be working like 1 or 2 days a week. But at that point, I don't have to work if I don't want to. It's a choice, right? Versus feeling like I'm trapped, having to make this income to support myself and support my family and living, like paycheck to paycheck or something like that. Real estate really provided that opportunity to create generational wealth for me, my family, and to give back to the community as well. One of my goals is actually to give out back $100,000 a year to like charities and communities that are doing like medical research that I really support. So I want to eventually reach that point.
Fantastic. That's great. Yeah, it's you did it right, right? You started young, you had a plan, do. Okay. And really anybody can do it, right? You don't have to be young. You don't have to be, right? You could do this at any age. You just have to have the guts to do it. Am I
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And like I said, there's plenty of creative methods out there. There's a really good book out there by Brandon Turner called How to Buy a House with like Low or No Money Down. And, one of the strategies mentioned that I mentioned was the lease option that you can do. And basically, you don't have to put any money down. You basically lease a property and then rent out the bedroom. So there's a lot of ways to get started. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Ryan, thanks so much for being with us today. This has been a lot of fun. And I know you really help people. Sometimes I interview people who are already like, have 450 units or 450 doors, and I think
Yeah.
they talk to people like, it's just a big gulf, right? You can't, I think you're talking more to a beginner investor, more to a person who like obviously newbie real estate investor, that's really helpful for people who have been kind of like a little bit afraid to put their toe in the water.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed my life so much that I'm basically, I want to give back and also show others like a viable path to actually do this for themselves. And you only need a couple properties. You don't need like 100 doors, right? You only need like 3 or 4 properties to reach financial independence through this method, because each, like I said, each property making, 2,500, 3,000 in rental income, like 3,000 times 4 is 12,000 a month. And significant of that amount is cash flow,
Yeah.
depending on your market, obviously. But yeah, I mean, you only need 4 properties to be financially free, and you can do it. And I would say the average person can do it in 8 to 10 years. It shouldn't take longer than that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. So thanks, Ryan. And thank you, listener, for tuning in and listening to Ryan. And I'd like you to now just stop and think of somebody who can benefit from this, somebody who has been on the fence, maybe in addition to you, who you can share this episode with, so that Ryan can reach even more people and make help even more people sooner rather than later.
Thank you again for having me on this podcast, Christine. It was
Thanks,
a
Ryan.
honor.
It's been great. It's been great talking with you, and we'll see you next week.